Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Renee Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is John David Latta. John and I are going to be talking on the topic today of the path to freedom and fearfulness. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Really, thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, thank you for being here as well, to share your story and to share how we can let go of fearfulness and achieve freedom. All right, so let me give you guys a short introduction to John. John says, terrified and stalked by oppressive fear of debt, John David Latta was a single dad with 2 children facing rock bottom, loneliness, and bankruptcy. Hard work and logic was getting him nowhere. The competition was tough, and he was in over his head. In his new book, The Synchronicity of Love, John shares his extraordinary stories of what happened while at rock bottom. His stories about his journey will inspire, uplift, heal, shock, awaken, and transform you. They contain the seeds of potential change. The potential to change habits, beliefs, and one's deepest assumptions about what is possible. Today, John David Latta is a mystic, author, teacher, and former founder and CEO of a multi-million-dollar consumer products company. He shares intimate and personal stories and teaching workshops on leadership, healing, transformation, awakening, love, synchronicity, and wisdom that unite and expand the human experience. Awesome bio.
Thank you.
But we're going to dive right in because your story is an interesting one. So can you tell us how you began your transformational journey from rock bottom? What was your aha moment or your fire starter? How did it happen?
Well, I think like a lot of people that go through transformation, it began with pain and suffering.
Yeah. It's usually true.
Yeah. So I was living what I would call a relatively charmed life, married, 2 children. I was the store manager for a large regional grocery chain. I managed a number of stores and coaching my kids' teams, and everything was going great. And then in a short period of time, all the wheels came off the cart. My wife got cancer. It came completely out of left field, entirely unexpected. And in a short period of time, they had to remove her entire thyroid gland. She has to take a pill every day for the rest of her life just to live. And she started to change. She started reading books about God and the meaning of life. And I think she was kind of reviewing her own life. And I'm not sure at that age and stage in my life, I was able to support her, what she was going through. And then about the same time, I left my very secure job, which I was really good at, and started my own company and promptly lost all of our money and a whole bunch more.
Oh,
and
wow.
In 2 years, I was $650,000 in debt, $250,000 in personal credit card debt. And I was running around in fear of, oh my God, we're going to go bankrupt. I don't know what we're going to do, where we're going to go. We're going to pull our kids out of school. I don't know where we're going to move. We won't have anything. And in the middle of it all, my wife decides to leave. She wants a whole new life. And so suddenly I'm a single dad with 2 kids, ages 9 and 11, facing bankruptcy. And that was my personal rock bottom. And it was embarrassing. It was difficult. I wasn't the kind of person that knew how to be vulnerable and reach out for help. I didn't want anybody to know what was happening to me.
Right.
And so about that same time, I was reading a book that Michael Crichton wrote. And Michael Crichton is a best-selling author, made TV and movies, but a lot of people don't know. He wrote a nonfiction book called Travels, and it was his sort of autobiography. And there was a chapter in there where he went to a spiritual retreat, which was a big leap for him because he was an intellectual and didn't really believe in that kind of thing. But he had all these wonderful experiences there. And I was feeling so bereft and lost in grief and in anger and hopelessness that I went and found the guy leading the retreat, couldn't believe he was still alive and doing retreats because Michael Crichton went back all the way back in 1982. And here was the guy still teaching the same stuff. I signed up for it and said, oh, well, if I go broke, another couple thousand isn't going to matter.
No, no, no.
And so
was the retreat in the United States, or you had to go to India?
no, it was in the United States. I was in the mountains in Southern California. The guy that taught it was, yeah, his name was Dr. William Brew Joy, and he went by his middle name Brew. And he was a very eminent Southern California physician who went through a big transformation himself and gave up being a medical doctor and became a spiritual teacher. And Michael Crichton felt safe with him because he was an intellectual. I felt safe with him because he seemed very non-guru-like. But weirdly, the minute I signed up for that, things in my life started to change. And it was so weird. And I remember on his website, he goes, this work can be very life renovating. And I went, I think I need a life renovation, whatever in the hell that is. I didn't know what I needed. I just knew I needed to be shook up some way. And so I got my mother and father to watch my kids, and I flew to California. And again, the synchronicities, the coincidences start to happen. As the plane is touching down at the airport, the woman next to me is reading Brew's book.
You're kidding me.
Oh, I'm not kidding.
Wow.
I turned around and looked, and I counted like about 180 seats on the plane. The only two people going to this retreat were me and her.
Oh
and
my gosh.
You're
giving me chills.
I know. Well, that's why I have the title of my book that way, because I never experienced, I don't think I even knew what synchronicity meant. And the only two people out of roughly 180 people in that plane going were me and her, this sweet little grandma from Kalispell, Montana,
Wow.
And we were both checking each other out like, well, you look normal. Well, you look normal too. Okay, well, maybe this is going to be okay.
Wow.
And so that's how it began. And then I went to the retreat. I didn't have a lot of crazy spiritual experiences. Some people did, but I didn't. But what I learned was I didn't realize how much kind of the hardworking, competitive, rational male, how much I'd kept people at a distance my whole life. And it was my first experience of truly connecting to other people, truly allowing myself to be vulnerable, listening to other people and their vulnerability. And I loved it. Yeah, it's like, oh my God, this is so great. And anyway, and so that's really how the journey began, right there. And then everything in my life proceeded to change after that.
Wow. That is an awesome story. It wasn't the way I thought it was going to go, because you started talking about the fear of death, and I'm thinking that your wife died. But yes, we're going to get to that in a minute. But that is an awesome story. And by the way, I have been a fan of the word synchronicity for years. In fact, I wrote my first book, and I talked about the topic because Deepak Chopra talks about that. And I do believe that there are no coincidences in life, and everything works together, for, in a synchronicitous way. So, so that is a great story. Now, there's so many ways I can go with my rebuttal here. One, I'm in the space right now that I'm studying this awesome, I'm studying his work, this awesome Navy SEAL. And he's talking about ambush, how to prepare yourself for the ambush, because he's a Navy SEAL and he's talking about that. And I'm in that space and I'm reading that. And then I'm also listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza and what he's talking about, the three chakras, that's for survival. And when you are focused on those three survival chakras, you don't get any of the spiritual stuff, to come in. So I'm thinking that, one, you were ambushed, and two, what you were saying is that as an intellectual male, you concentrated on and being connected to your work and being, survival and all that. And you didn't work on your spirituality, which is, the other four chakras and things like that. So it's a great story, a great way to start your journey. So Bridget the Gap, how did the fear of death get involved in here?
Well, I forgot to throw that in there too. So at the same time that my wife got cancer and decided she wanted a whole new life, the same time I was suddenly a single dad, with custody of my 2 kids and, facing bankruptcy and my company just not doing well, just hemorrhaging cash like crazy. I don't know where it came from. Suddenly I was terrified of death. And you're right. I didn't have any spiritual background. I was raised part-time Catholic at best, stopped going to church when I was probably 13 or 14. And then, and so I didn't have anything to fall back on. I didn't have a tradition to fall back on. And so probably like a lot of people, I kind of identified with the body, and I kept picturing like, wow, when the body goes, that's it, it's over. And I couldn't wrap my mind around forever or oblivion. It was terrifying for me. Like it's over forever and ever and ever. It was so scary. And so, but I had so much going on in my life that I kind of shoved the fear of death aside. And, I didn't have anybody that I knew that I could talk to. And plus, I think I was too proudly logical and rational to even talk about that subject. And so I went to the retreat, and 3 years later, that same teacher formed a year-round study group where we met both in person and had like online exercises and stuff. So I signed up for it because I really liked the closeness I felt with all the other people. And we started in January, and almost at the end of the first year, it was November. He goes, okay, for the month of November, we're going to greet the mystery of death. And I was like, oh my God, this is
I'm going to face this fear.
That's exactly right. And so, so what happened was he goes, I want you to prepare for your own death. If you don't have a will, make a will. If you need to make amends to other people or say something to other people before you die, do it this month. If you need to talk to your kids or your parents or somebody you've harmed or been harmed by, this is your time. You've got 1 month to do this. And then in the meantime, he goes, I want you to meditate on death, pray on death, read books on death, listen to CDs on death. I mean, talk about embracing it all and facing it all. And I did. And I had wondrous experiences and wonderful visions and meditations, like big, long dreams, where I remember this woman comes to me and says, well, before you know about death, first you need to know all about life. And she shows me how we're both human and divine. And I hadn't really thought about that before. Wow. And I could see in my dream the human side of myself struggling to get away from the divine self. And it kind of presented, the image it presented to me was Jesus was like the divine self, and Hercules, all, strong and brawny and muscular. And I could see him struggling. And then he suddenly looks over his shoulder and realizes that they're brothers, they're working together. And it was beautiful. And then the next day I had another profound dream. Okay, now you know about life. Now we're going to teach you about death. And I saw the whole journey of how the soul
Really?
yes, transforms, leaves the body. And at least in my case.
Now who taught you that? Did you just dream that or
no, it was like
I tell you that?
No, it was I would meditate and say, teach me about death. I want to know about it. And so, some people have the experience of guides, they might call them, or angels, or their higher self, something wiser that sees more of what's going on than I do. Comes and shows me. And I read books by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who has written for 30 years on the subject and done tons of hospice work. And I listened to music on it. And by the end of the month, it sounds really funny, I love death. And I mean, it's so cliche.
That is a crazy statement.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really did what he wanted us to do, to embrace it. And so it did teach me a lesson. It sounds so cliche. People say it all the time, turn around, face your fears, but it's true.
It's true. It is true. It is very true. That's why they say that when you have a fear, you feel like you're going to die, pardon the pun, when you were thinking of it or doing it or whatever. Let's talk of the fear of flying. I mean, my goodness, people almost get heart attacks if they're so afraid. But once they've done it, it becomes less and less. It doesn't go away immediately. But once you've done it and you see you didn't die, it becomes a little less and less and less. But yeah, in my personal life, they say that debt is something that we all going to experience. And it's really interesting that we're having the conversation, because 99.9% of people don't become conscious of that.
Yeah.
And that's why we suffer and grieve about death. But it's something that we all have to go through at some point, right?
Yeah.
So because I know at some point in time that I'm going to die, I kind of, live, they say live every day like if it's going to be your last. I mean, I don't, consciously do it every day, but I have the principles in mind, to say what I have to say, do what I've got to do, make sure that I have a will, make sure that my kids know that I love them, make sure, you know what I mean? Because you never know when you're going to go, right?
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that I think when I first started my transformation journey, I don't remember which, because I've had a lot of mentors, and Deepak Chopra was one of them, and Wayne Dwyer was one of them, and a lot of but somebody had it's not a meditation, but it's a conscious awareness of you are sitting in the back of the room at your funeral. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did he take you there too?
No,
Or
no,
did you go there?
no.
Okay. Right. What do you think of that one? But it's meant to see what are people saying about you.
Yeah.
Did you do everything that you were supposed to do? You know what I mean? What is your eulogy kind of thing? So you sit in the back. So, but that's facing it. You know what I mean? So yeah.
No, I think that's a beautiful thing, because I
Mhm.
actually think if you do something like that, a wiser part of you knows where you're going and knows where you want to end up. And so, I wouldn't want to put too much pressure on myself to like, oh my God, I've got so much to achieve. But I still think the wiser part of myself sitting in that funeral is going to say, John wanted to do this, this, and this in his life, and he did it. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's a beautiful exercise.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. All right. Well, let's circle back to the you were saying that what was it like being a single dad with custody of young children and
Yeah.
undergoing a major spiritual transformation?
Yeah.
You mentioned that when you went to the retreat, you had, parents, so you left the kids with the grandparents. But when you came back, how did that work?
Oh my God. Okay. Well, two things happened. Nobody warned me. And I've learned since then that sometimes you can go to these wonderful retreats and you kind of remove yourself from the world and people are connecting each other in a really deep, profound, beautiful way. And then you come back to the real world. And so the reentry was a little difficult. I came back full of like love and hope and happiness. And my kids were mad at my mother, and the cat ran away, and the son was crying, and my mother didn't seem to care. And so, yeah, that was hard. So, but what happened was when I left the retreat, the teacher put a lot of emphasis on dreams, and he gave me and everybody there an exercise in how to remember your dreams. And I'll share it really quick. He said, get a journal, a pen, pencil, a recording device, something by your bed. And as you get in bed and as you're falling asleep and you kind of feel yourself drifting off, like I'm about to fall asleep, he goes, try and imagine in your mind's eye that you walk up to the edge of a really tall cliff. You take off all your clothes, you turn your back to the abyss, and you fall backwards in total trust and ask for a dream. And so I started doing that because he put a lot of emphasis on dreams. And, Carl Jung and a lot of others have too. I mean, and so, the first 1, 2, 3, 4 days, maybe I remembered a second or two of a dream. But boy, by the end of, I want to say a week or 2 or 3 weeks, suddenly I had dreams flooding forth. And so I was writing down as many as 5 dreams every single, in the middle of the night and in the morning, but I didn't have the slightest idea what they meant, and I was like, and so, then it was a whole learning curve of learning to read the language of dreams, because dreams usually speak to us symbolically.
Yes.
And it's usually better to use your intuition to understand your dream rather than your logical mind. And that was new for me too. I think I was very logical and sequential, linear male kind of thing, And to see something and understand it with intuition was new for me. So that took quite a while to start to go, okay, now I see what the dreams are trying to tell me. So fast forward 2 years. And so I owned this huge consumer products company that thankfully stopped bleeding cash and kind of flatlined for about a year or two. It didn't get worse, but it didn't get better. I had just enough to get by the skin of my teeth. And then I had the opportunity to sell my products on QVC, the home shopping network, which I'd never done before. And I'd never been on live TV before. And they said, you're going to try and you have 7 minutes to sell your stuff. And you're going to have, I think they said 700,000 new viewers every 60 seconds. And I was like, holy moly, which was great, but I was nervous. And they said, we want you to just talk over the back fence like it's a casual conversation. Don't hard sell everybody, but you're going to repeat your little pitch every minute because you have 700,000 new people every minute. So I was really nervous. I get on TV. It goes great. I sell a fair amount of product, not a ton, but it wasn't a failure either. And I go back to my hotel room in Philadelphia, and I can't go to sleep. My body's full of all this joy. And I'm assuming it's because I didn't screw up on live TV. And it's like the relief of, oh my God, thank God that was over and I didn't screw up. But then
sold some products. Hey.
And I sold some products. Yep. And so I can't go to bed. I can't go to sleep. And plus I have to get up at 5 a.m. to fly home. And, my body's still on West Coast time. And so anyway, so I'm laying in bed like in midnight, kind of just dozing, but not sleeping. And all of a sudden I have what feels like this gigantic orgasm in my perineum area. And it kind of goes poof, and it fills my whole body with this like blissful, happy sensation. It kind of shoots upwards and through my whole body. And I'm like, what the hell was that? And then, I don't know, 3 minutes goes by. Poof, it happens again. And again and again and again. And it goes on for hours. And half of me, the Catholic boy in me, is going, what the hell is going on? And the other part of me is like, I don't know, but it sure feels good. And so I had no idea. And so I got no sleep that night. I had to get up at 3 a.m. I tried to shake off all this happy energy in my body, slept for maybe an hour or two, flew home. And I emailed a bunch of people that had been in that first retreat to ask them, like, what do you think is happening?
Seen this? Right.
Yeah. And they said, well, it's, a lot of them said, well, it sounds like kundalini rising and, you should look it up. Okay. And I did look it up, and it turns out all cultures have the same name. Some, Christians, I think, call it movement of the Holy Spirit. And there's all cultures have their name for sometimes somebody's sort of in a period of time where you just say there's a lot of energy in the body. And so that gave me a little bit of peace. And so what started to happen then for months, even years actually, but for months afterwards, every second or third night, I tuck my kids in bed, I go to bed, and about an hour later, oh my God, here we go again. And so all sorts of crazy, beautiful visions, sometimes terrifying visions. I had tons of visions of giant cobras, and I had goddesses up the kazoo. I had the best sex of my life with all these beautiful goddesses. I would wake up in strange yoga positions, and I didn't even do yoga. I mean, it went on and on and on. And so this is coming back to your question about being a single dad with 2 kids. It's kind of weird. Like, I'm a normal guy. I like to play football and basketball. I got a chemical company, for God's sakes. I coach my kids' ball teams, and I'm having these crazy spiritual experiences at night, and I don't know who to talk to. And my kids are little, I'm not going to talk to my kids about it. And so,
why didn't you have the number to call I didn't catch his name, but the spiritual master?
Yeah, I didn't have a phone number, but I did have an email. And I remember emailing about this. And all he said was, be patient with this development, John. That's all he said, which actually made me really happy, because I started reading books, and which kind of gave me peace. It's like, okay, I get this has actually happened to lots of people. And it's considered a good thing, even though it's kind of weird while it's happening. And but there were some scary stories too. And my biggest fear through that whole time was I was going to be debilitated somehow, or be weird and not be able to run my company and be dad to my kids, but it never happened. I don't want to say the energy had its wisdom all its own. It knew when to push me to the brink, and it knew when to back off. There was some nights I went, God, I just need to sleep tonight. Can you just leave me alone? And it would. And so, and then a couple nights go by. I'm like, okay, I feel okay. You can come back now. I have no idea what's going on, but, and one of the things that happened in the blink of an eye was I became a healer. And so if you've ever, done Reiki or experienced Reiki or energy work or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't get the book or the training. It happened on its own through me. And so this profound
That's
energy that was going through
beautiful.
me would sometimes move through me on behalf of other people in random places, like in restaurants and stuff. So there was one time I took my daughter and her two little friends out to dinner. We're in a Chinese restaurant, and my male judge is judging the Chinese waitress that's waiting on us, is really unattractive. And she walks through the door back into the kitchen. And when she walks back out, she suddenly transforms into the most beautiful creature on earth. And I was like, oh my freaking God, but nobody else saw this, just me. Everybody was still jabbering away, and so little things and big things like that kept happening. And I was learning. And one of the things I learned, I forget sometimes, is you really can't judge a book by its cover. And there are really beautiful souls underneath whatever their exterior experience or appearance might be. And so again, coming back to your question of what it was like, sometimes I'd be so tired from the energy at night, I would come home early from work. So the kids would get dropped off at 4 p.m. from the school bus, and I would come home and try and take like a little 20-minute nap at like 3 or 3:30 right before the kids. Geez, I'm having all these crazy experiences. And then the doorbell rings, and all the crazy experiences go away, and I'm just a dad again. Okay, how was school? What homework do you have? Okay, let's get ready because we got to go to baseball practice. And so, and one other thing I was going to say, I felt so, talk about a really sort of supportive synchronistic experience. I was in a spiritual bookstore back when they used to have those things, and there was an author I really liked, and I saw that he had a whole bunch of books, and I was kind of admonishing myself, like, don't buy any more books. You got too many books. But there was a really nice book called Parent as Mystic, Mystic as Parent. And I went, oh, that sounds like me. And so I go up to the counter and I go to pay for it. And the lady goes, oh yeah, this is a really good book. Would you like the author? Would you like him to sign it for you? I'm like, what? And at that precise moment, he walks out of this back room where he was teaching a class. And she goes, David, come on up here.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was so sweet. And the weird thing is, he knew Brew Joy, the guy I went to earlier. They actually used to teach together. I didn't know that this guy, his name was David Spangler, was one of the leaders in what they called the New Age or New Thought movement, all the way back in his 20s. And so he put his arm around me. He goes, it's great being a parent who has mystical experiences. It's okay. It'll actually enhance your parenting. And I was so needed to hear that, because again, I felt so alone. I didn't have spiritual friends. I wasn't raised that way. This all felt like really brand new territory for me. And so I felt this great comfort in his presence. It's like, okay, shit, I can do this.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, you said a mouthful there.
Yeah. Sorry.
this is such an interesting story. I'm sitting here thinking, boy, I just love this job of mine, to sit here and speak to people that with these amazing stories. All right. But I'm curious about a couple of things. So let's take them one at a time. So what were you dreaming about first when you started dreaming? You said that you would fall down, which, listen, I never remember my dreams, so I'm going to try that. But you remembered your dreams, and you said you wrote them down for a couple of years. What were your dreams about?
What they were mostly about was exactly the process I was going through at the time, but I didn't really know it. But the dreams were trying to explain it to me. And so what that was, as I understand it now looking back, this sort of rigid, rational, linear, male, competitive kind of guy was coming into a whole other side of himself that we would just loosely call feminine. And so my dreams were full of women and goddesses and like every face of the feminine you could think of. And I'll give you an example of the kind of dreams I had. So I used to be a store manager for a large regional chain, right? So
Mhm.
now I have a dream where I'm back at my old store, and all the managers and the employees are women, and they and they're like, it's okay. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I know how things work here anymore. It's okay, John, we're going to show you. We're going to show you.
Okay.
So
Okay.
everything that most people would attribute to feminine, I was learning, being
Yes.
more relational, being a
Intuition.
better
Right.
intuition,
Yes. Right.
listening.
Mhm. Mhm.
I at the same time that this was going on, I entered a group therapy process. It wasn't spiritual; it was just group therapy. I'd never done it before, and the
Mhm.
blink of an eye, suddenly they're all women and two women therapists, and I'm like this man alone, and they're like, "John, you're so good at doing. You should try being." I'm like, "What the hell is being?" And so yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
everything that was the opposite of me is what I was coming into, and that's what the dreams were trying to show me.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I like that. Now I love what I started off with, where, when we're connected to the chakras or energy systems in our body that are in survival mode, then we don't have any mystical experiences because we're tied to mass. We're not
Right.
tied to energy. So yeah, your dreams were taking you into the feminine. It was taking you into maybe dropping some of the mass and going into
Yep.
the spiritual part. But what really fascinates me, the next part of my question, is the orgasmic energy
Yeah.
that flowed through your body. And it's really interesting, but I've never had anything like you're talking about. But
Mhm.
once in a while, I would wake up in the morning, I mean, like 3 in the morning or so,
Yeah.
and I will feel my body alive with energy. It wasn't orgasmic or
Yeah.
anything, but I can feel the energy churning in my body, and I'm thinking you're right that it was the Holy Spirit or something.
Yeah.
Um, and I just let it flow. And I was thinking just a couple of nights ago that I haven't felt that in a while.
Hmm.
I haven't felt that in a while. But what you're saying is that you had this experience where so how do you explain that? And I know you told me about it, but how do you explain what was happening? Do you think, or how did you attract it? First of all, let's try
God,
that.
you would not believe how many people have read my book and say, "How do I get some of that Kundalini stuff?" And I go, like, "I don't
Yeah,
know."
how did you
Because
attract it?
there are people that practice Kundalini yoga all the time, and that is their goal. And so I can tell you what I think happened looking back. Like I
Okay.
sometimes I think these things are just meant to happen when they're meant to happen, and and so
Right.
maybe I didn't do anything. It was just my time.
Okay.
But
All right.
here's what I was doing.
Mhm.
Um, the teacher wanted to, again, this is really in alignment with Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist. And it was like
Mhm.
dreams help make the unconscious conscious. And
Ah,
so dreams will,
true.
no matter how you try to wear a mask in front of other people, dreams are going to reveal all the dynamics going inside of you. And some of
Okay.
it's beautiful and amazing. And some of it's like, oh shit, really? That's me too?
Right.
And it's all there. And so one of the reasons he was a big proponent of dream work was, let's make the unconscious conscious. And then what he always had us doing was, if you can see on the camera here, heart-centered meditation. That was the
Mhm.
practice. And coming
Okay.
back to you talking about these lower chakras and upper chakras, he always
Mhm.
said this is the function of the heart chakra. It unites the lower chakras that are really
Yes.
more food,
Right.
sex, power, survival, you might say. They're
Yeah.
not bad,
Right.
they're very necessary. And the
Mhm.
upper chakras that we sometimes call heaven, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it says yes to the lower chakras and yes to the upper chakras. It says yes to
Mhm.
profound spiritual experiences and yes to getting a job and paying the bills and raising the kids.
Mhm.
And so I took him really seriously. And so he goes, every time this dream would come up, I want you to use your heart center, because if you try to use your mind or your ego, it's not going to work.
No.
But the heart center will love all parts of yourself. That's the
Yes.
best way I can
Okay.
put it. And so, is it perfect? No. Does it happen for me all the time? No. but it did happen a lot because I was very sincere about the practice. You might say I was trying to integrate all parts of self. You might say I was trying to love all the parts of myself. And
Hmm.
so that's what preceded the whole kundalini thing. So there's 2 years of that kind of practice. Now, I wasn't doing it with the goal of kundalini. I didn't even know what the word meant.
Right.
And one of the things that was kind of fun for me about the journey and what I tried to share in my book is I really felt like I was, a spiritual newbie. Like I didn't know the words. I didn't, and so all these
Right.
things kept happening to me. And I was like, what the hell is that?
That's
And
beautiful.
so, yeah, you might say I tried to heal my triggers, my stuff. That's probably the best thing
Mhm.
way I can describe it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is an incredible story. And I'm pretty sure because you're in a spiritual space that it wouldn't, when you look back at these things, it wouldn't have happened if your wife didn't leave you. You wouldn't have gone there, right?
That's exactly
So
right.
that pain and hitting rock bottom was your fire starter, was the rod in your hand like Moses or what. So that's beautiful. So yeah, so if you follow the path, you had the dreams, then you started having these beautiful spiritual experiences that were
Mhm.
orgasmic. Then you became a healer, and now you're a mystic, an author, and you see past the outside.
Mhm.
And that is absolutely amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. All
Thank
right.
you. I was going to say one more thing too.
Mm,
I was so staunchly anti-spiritual and anti-religious, so stuck in my know-it-all logical mind. I think it took all of those things going wrong at the same time to move me somewhere else. I would have been too proud
yes.
to go, I'm going to go to a spiritual retreat. I literally felt like that Nazi skinhead who had to learn to move in and become best friends with his black neighbors. It was that difficult for me. And I, so anyway,
Yeah.
I
But
had to
I'm
be
a
really
firm
hit in the head
believer.
hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that you said, like you started off, I think the first word you said is that pain is usually our transformation. And
Yeah.
you experienced a whole bunch of things happening at one time. It led you down your path. It led you down to what your purpose is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Um, and that's absolutely amazing thing for anybody that's listening, that's going through pain, that is, hit rock bottom. It is a great story to share because how many rapturous stories that we've heard that started exactly like this? And what do?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
share their experiences like
Yeah.
you're doing. It's
Yeah.
it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. All right, so let's talk about your book.
Okay.
So your book is called The Synchronicity of Love, right? Is
Right.
there more to the title? That's all I have here.
Yeah. There's a little subtitle: Stories that Heal, Transform, and Awaken.
Okay, all right, awesome. So I normally ask the question why you wrote it, but we're not even going to ask that question because why
Okay.
you wrote it, because this is an amazing story that needs to be told. So we're going to just go right to the question of what do you want the readers to walk away with after reading your story?
Well,
Amazing story.
yeah, I think I would take all those rigid, rational know it alls and just say, believe me, you don't know it all. In fact, one of my favorite sayings is, you don't know what you don't know. And actually, what I've encountered in the journey, the more I know, the more I realize how little I really know. And
Wow.
so I like to use the analogy that, or, the symbol of that I think we all build a brick walls around ourselves,
Mhm,
and let's call the walls safety. You know,
mhm,
the way I see the world helps me feel safe. The way I live in the world, how I participate helps me feel safe. But then I think comes the opportunity, especially if there's been a lot of pain, to start to dismantle those walls and
mhm,
allow yourself to see the world differently, to see yourself differently, allow your perception of things to grow and evolve. And so that's what I wanted to capture in the book. It's 119 short stories. They're all true or mostly true stories. Like probably half the book had some kind of connection to a dream or an experience in a dream. And I think that's been the most beautiful thing, and probably the hardest thing for me, is this feeling of there's no end to evolution. There's no end to how you can see and perceive yourself and others and situations. And that's okay. And, there's an author, a popular author named Joe Vitale, and he's written a bunch of books. And he goes,
Yeah.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
embarrassed by some of my early books, but I really believed them when I wrote them. But now I look back, I don't believe that anymore. I don't perceive the world. And he goes, but that's okay, because that's
growth, right? I love
growth.
Dr. Joe Vitale. Yep.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love him. But you know what? I forgot to ask this question.
Yeah.
I want to ask you now. You ended up saying that you loved that. Now,
Yeah.
was the dreams and the spiritual experiences, because the reason that people that have near-death experiences sometimes say they don't want to come back
Yeah.
is because it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
On that side, is that why you love that? Because your dreams and this experiences, that it's a beautiful place.
I didn't have that experience. I've had similar, but not quite that, like, oh my God, this profound love, profound beauty,
Right.
where I left my body and went somewhere and spoke to God or to angels, or, some wise being or beings that said, here's where you're at, but you need to go back, and here's what you need to do. There's still things to do, lessons to be learned. And so it wasn't
But at
like
least you
that.
know the story, even if you haven't
Yeah.
lived it.
Yeah.
That's what happens, right? That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't sometimes have a little apprehension about it, but still, I don't know how to put it. It's like, how sometimes you just know something, and so what I saw on the other side is, try and imagine, skydivers, when a bunch of them jump out of a plane and they're all linked together, holding each other's ankles and wrists.
Yeah. Yeah.
So try and imagine a grid around Earth made of light, but it's actually composed of millions of people holding each other by their hands and wrists. And
that's
so
beautiful.
people have talked about that there's a Christ grid that's built around Earth, and it's even being constructed as we speak. And so the way I understand it, I know it kind of messes with the mind, when I die, I go to join that. And I'm both an individual, but I'm also kind of part of a greater collective, you might say. Like, I'm part of that grid. So I'm still like an individual, but I'm also part. And my experience of it was, when people are on Earth and they have a problem, or they have a question, or they're praying, this grid answers the question. It's like a profound grid of infinite wisdom, you might say, and infinite love. And
so that's where our guides are. And
yes,
okay,
that's what I go and join. That's what the dream showed me. Those are my people, you might say.
Right.
Hang out there and help people from up in the sky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's beautiful. All right.
Yeah.
Well, John, this was an amazing interview from start to finish. And one of the reasons I don't do pre-interviews is because I like to be shocked and I like to be amazed. And I like to be, right. So I absolutely love your story. It opens up a lot of doors to the mystic, opens up a lot of doors to energy, opens up a lot of doors to, living from your upper centers and not your lower centers. I love the fact that you're saying that women embody this energy more than the logical male. So all those things are beautiful. So yeah, thank you so much for helping to transform our minds on to freedom, because that's actually our topic, freedom and fearlessness, and for all the little nuggets that you gave us. Yeah, the nugget of how to remember your dreams, the nugget of embracing your spirituality and your kundalini. I used to do a kundalini meditation, and the way and there's one time somebody posted a snake actually crawling up a tree. And I have that visual that when I do my kundalini yoga, not yoga,
Mhm.
meditation of the energy, crawling up my, my spine.
Right.
But I've actually never heard of the kundalini when you're laying in bed and the energy is just, coming on you.
Yeah.
So,
It was both. It felt like it was coming from the outside in and from the inside out. I had some of the classic, the energy starting down low and rising up high. But
mhm.
man, it was all over the map. So it's
Yeah,
just
that's what
like,
I'm
yeah,
hearing you, that's what I'm hearing, that it was just, and like I said, I have experienced, semi of that, not to the full spectrum, but I've experienced that where, I know my body is so alive because I'm feeling this ball of energy and it's
yeah.
so beautiful.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, all right. So we're fresh out of time. Great conversation. So, and before we wrap up, do you have any last words for our listeners?
Uh, no last words. Just maybe what I said earlier. Just if you feel stuck, uh, yay! This is the perfect time to transform. And it's if you're feeling stuck or rock bottom in pain, I mean, open your doors to something else, and because on the other side of that is something amazing. And I think if you can I'm not saying I necessarily went without kicking and screaming, but because there was times that I was like, "What the hell is going on with me?" It
Yeah,
was just
yeah, yeah.
spiritual transformation, single dad, 2 kids, company going bankrupt, terrified of death. Yeah, I mean, it was hard. And I was a skinny, scrawny guy already, and I ended up losing 15 pounds, and I just looked like a little skeleton.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
That's good to
I
hear
would
that.
say if
Mhm.
you're in it, when you get on the other side, it'll all make sense. And so I just want to say, hang in there.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yep. Yes, there's a purpose to your
Yeah.
pain, right? So, all right, guys, listen, I know that you enjoyed this as much as I did. So thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life. I want to thank John David Latta for sharing his experience. Definitely go pick up a copy of his book because yeah, he shared just a couple of stories and his book is full of stories, get some more information but dreams and what they mean and how you can transform your life as well by understanding the synchronicity of love. Thanks again, John, for coming on to the show. If you're listening to this on iTunes, would love for you to rate and review. If you're watching this on YouTube, would love for you to subscribe. A copy of my transcript, the transcript of this interview will be on the show page, which is blog.myhelps.us with links to John's book. So if you missed anything, just head over there. All right. Thanks again, John. Thanks to you guys for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.